You ever had one of those moments where everything you thought you understood about a person suddenly crumbles? Where a smile you've seen 100 times suddenly feels like a threat? That moment came for me the night my mother-in-law handed me a glass of sangria and said, "Special cocktail for my favorite son-in-law." She smiled when she said it, but something in her eyes flickered. Just a beat too long, a tightness in her jaw, a tremor in her hand. I didn't drink it. I switched glasses with her husband. 45 minutes later, he was pale and puking in the guest bathroom, clutching his stomach and moaning like he'd been poisoned. Because, well, he had. My name is Julian Mercer. I'm 32 years old. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, where I run a small but respectable photography business. I'm not famous, but I'm good. Weddings, magazine covers, wildlife expeditions. I've slept in snowdrifts to capture bison migrations. I've stood on cliffs for that perfect golden hour silhouette. And I've built this life from scratch. No shortcuts, no sponsors, no safety net. But to my in-laws, none of it ever mattered. To them, I was always just the photographer. My wife, Haley, is everything they raised her to be, except in one way. She fell in love with me, not a hedge fund manager, not a surgeon with a country club membership. Me. I met her 6 years ago at a small art exhibition where my work was on display. Landscapes mostly, and one moody black and white shot of a man in a canoe that made people pause. She did more than pause. She asked about the lighting, the composition, then asked about me. We clicked instantly. She was finishing her master's in environmental science. I was just trying to get noticed. But we understood each other. We both saw the world in layers. Light, contrast, motion, energy. Her parents, they saw the world in stock options and pedigree. From the first handshake, her father, Gerald, made it clear. I wasn't what he'd ordered for his only daughter. He was tall, smooth, and dripping in that smug confidence of men who believe wealth is the same as wisdom. He asked me what I did. I said I was a photographer. He nodded. But what's your actual plan? Diane, her mother, was more subtle. That genteel southern sweetness that cloaks daggers in compliments. She'd invite me to family dinners, then introduce me as Haley's friend who takes pictures. Never Julian, never her husband. I brought expensive wine. I shared client features. I even gifted them a photo book I'd shot in Vietnam. Handmade binding, gold embossing, the works. They nodded politely, then changed the subject. Here's something I've learned. And maybe you felt this too. There are people who only measure success in terms they can dominate. If it's not a salary they understand, a title they recognize, a lifestyle they envy, it doesn't count. They smile at you, but they're always squinting, sizing you up, trying to figure out how someone like you could be part of their world. The night it happened, I was exhausted. I'd just gotten back from a 10-day assignment in Montana, a winter wildlife spread. I had frostburn on my cheeks and 3 cracked lenses in my case. But Haley insisted we go to her mother's birthday dinner. Just for a few hours, she promised. It would mean a lot. It meant nothing to them, but I went for her. We drove to their colonial-style home in the wealthiest part of town. I put on a clean shirt and my best fake smile. Inside, it was exactly the same as every other Sunday dinner. Gerald bragged about a new deal. Diane hovered over Haley, adjusting her hair like she was still 5. Owen, Haley's brother, made polite small talk with his wife, Vanessa, quietly sipping wine and looking like she wanted to disappear. I nursed a beer and waited for it to be over. Then dessert came. Diane announced her famous sangria. She disappeared into the kitchen, and something told me to follow. Call it intuition, or maybe a photographer's instinct, a feeling when the light in the room doesn't match the tone. I walked in just in time to see her drop something into a glass. A vial, small, clear, quick motion. She didn't see me, but when she turned, her smile was plastic. "Oh, Julian, I've got this. This one's for you." She handed me the glass. The surface shimmered slightly, an oily sheen, just enough to catch the light. "Special cocktail, just for you." My throat tightened. "Let me help you carry these," I said casually, grabbing both glasses. And then I switched them. Back at the table, Gerald barely looked up from his phone. "Sangria, sir?" I asked. He grunted and took the glass. I sat down. Said I'd stick with water. Watched as he downed half the glass in one go. 45 minutes later, he was in the bathroom. The sound of retching echoed down the hall. The air grew tense. Diane's face went gray. Haley jumped up, panicked. Diane stammered something about shrimp. "Maybe bad shellfish," she said, but I saw the flicker of realization in her eyes. She knew, and she knew that I knew. You'd think I'd explode, that I'd confront her on the spot, rage, accuse, demand answers. But I didn't. The anger didn't burn hot. It turned cold, focused, sharp. Because this wasn't just about a drink. This wasn't a one-time act. This was war. That following Monday, I paid a visit to Jason. He runs a private lab, forensic toxicology and pharmaceutical research mostly. I'd shot some branding images for him a few years back, and we'd stayed loosely connected. He didn't ask many questions when I handed him the sealed glass in a Ziploc bag. "Personal or professional?" he asked. "Family matter," I said, and that was the end of it. 3 days later, I got a call. Jason's voice was calm, clinical, but his words weren't. "Julian, there were benzodiazepines in that glass. A strong dose. Not lethal, but enough to knock someone out. Possibly cause confusion, memory loss, or drowsiness for hours." He paused. "You want to tell me where this came from?" "No," I said quietly. "I just need a report. Something on paper. Signed and time-stamped." "Copy that." That night, I couldn't sleep. Haley lay next to me, breathing softly, one hand resting across my chest like a familiar anchor. I stared at the ceiling and asked myself the question that had been building ever since I saw Diane spike the drink. Why? Why would someone go through that trouble? Why drug me? Was it meant to hurt? To sedate? To embarrass? The answer wouldn't come easy, because I was still looking at it like an isolated moment. But I was starting to understand it wasn't. It was part of something far bigger, a pattern, a system, a campaign. And I'd just been pulled into it without knowing. Over the next 2 weeks, I did what I do best: observe. But this time, I wasn't holding a camera. I was watching people, listening, asking subtle questions, clicking through old emails and social media posts with a detective's eye. What I found shook me. Diane had prescriptions for Xanax from not one, not two, but 3 different doctors, filled from different pharmacies, under slightly varied versions of her name: Diane A. Langston, D.A. Langston, Langston Davenport. The woman was gaming the system. There were rumors around town too, buried under polite gossip and country club brunch talk. A neighbor once accused her of stealing a family heirloom bracelet at a charity auction. It mysteriously turned up weeks later in her guest bathroom drawer. Another neighbor, a doctor, told me off the record that Diane had once tried to get a prescription for anti-anxiety meds using someone else's address. Everyone smiled about it, brushed it off. "Oh, that's just Diane. She's intense." Intense! The woman tried to drug her son-in-law with prescription-grade sedatives. That's not intense. That's unhinged. In toxic families, the manipulators rarely look like villains. They're often the ones hosting brunch, baking cookies, donating to charities. But behind the good mother persona is a puppet master who thrives on control. Not just of situations, but of people. I started combing through every message Diane had sent me over the last few years. What once seemed like passive aggression now read like psychological warfare. Maybe one day you'll find something more stable. Haley's always had a soft spot for underdogs. The photos are lovely, but does it come with benefits? One line hit me like a brick. "You'll see, Julian, sometimes the people we love need help making the right decisions." That wasn't advice. That was a confession. Then came the turning point. I was in my studio, late, sorting through prints, when I got a text from an unknown number. "I left something in your mailbox. Don't tell anyone. V." I knew it had to be Vanessa, Owen's wife. She'd always been quiet at family gatherings, watchful, the kind of person who never spoke first but always saw everything. I found a USB drive wrapped in a piece of tissue paper. No explanation. Just one line on the folded note. You need to see what I couldn't say. There were 5 files on the drive. I opened the first. It was dated 2 weeks before the birthday dinner. A living room camera, security timestamp clear in the corner. Gerald and Diane arguing. Their voices were muffled at first, then sharp and direct. Gerald, why him? Why now? Diane, he needs to be shaken up. He's too confident. Gerald, you're playing with fire. Diane, I'm doing what you won't. I paused the video. My heart was racing, not from fear, but from validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. This was premeditated. The second video was the one that froze my blood. Timestamp, the night of the birthday dinner. Angle, kitchen, wide lens, center counter in full view. Diane takes out a small glass vial, twists the top, pours a clear liquid into a wine glass, puts it on a separate tray, turns toward the door just as I enter. There's no audio on this one, just silence and the visual of me taking the glasses. The third video, Gerald, 45 minutes later, moaning on the living room floor. Diane pacing, hands on her face. You drank the wrong one, she screams. What are you talking about? He barks. It was meant for Julian. Idiot. He stares at her in horror. This isn't the first time you've done something like this, he says. You need help. When people like Diane feel someone slipping out of their grasp, they don't let go gracefully. They double down. They create chaos. They weaponize concern, kindness, illness, anything to reassert power. What I had seen in Diane wasn't rage. It was fear. Of me. Of losing Haley. Of not being in charge. And that made her dangerous. The fifth file nearly made me sick. 2 days after the dinner, same living room, same angle. Diane and Gerald again. Gerald. He knows what you did. Diane. So what? It's his word against mine. Gerald. Haley will believe him. Diane. Not when I'm done. She sat on the couch, arms folded. I've already started planting the idea that their marriage is under strain, that he's insecure, that he's pushing her too hard. Give me a few weeks. She'll believe it's her idea to walk away. She smiled. And when she does, she'll come home. I shut the laptop and sat in silence. That night, I stared at Haley as she slept. And for the first time, I didn't feel just protective of her. I felt like she'd been robbed. Her entire life, her decisions had been shaped by invisible hands. Her parents orchestrating her path like a board game. And now they were trying to take her away from me. Not with force, not with threats, but with lies, whispered behind her back. They weren't trying to destroy her life. They were trying to own it. There's a strange guilt that comes with uncovering manipulation, like finding out someone you love was living in a house of mirrors, and you never noticed. That guilt hit me hard after watching those videos, because if they were willing to go this far with me, what else had they done? That's when I remembered the name. Thomas, the one Diane had mentioned during a phone call I'd accidentally overheard last Christmas. Haley could have married Thomas, you know, orthopedic surgeon, family money, real stability, but instead she chose the creative one. That creative hung in the air like a bad smell. At the time, I brushed it off, thought it was just more of Diane being Diane. But now, I needed answers. I found Thomas on LinkedIn, private practice, new city, married with kids. His profile picture was a generic headshot, but his eyes had that cautious warmth I've seen in other good men who've been burned. I sent him a message. Hi, Thomas. I'm Julian. I'm married to Haley. I think we need to talk. To my surprise, he replied an hour later. We set up a Zoom call. He was nervous at first, asked if this was a prank. Then I said one sentence. I think Diane and Gerald did to me what they once did to you. He went quiet, then slowly began to talk. Thomas had met Haley in college. They were together for 3 years. She was in love. He was serious. There was even a proposal. Then, everything unraveled. Text messages appeared from other women. Crude, obvious, but damaging. Anonymous emails. Rumors whispered to friends. A confrontation with Gerald that left Thomas feeling humiliated and confused. I tried to defend myself, he said, but Haley had already been told I was cheating. They convinced her it was all for her protection. When I asked if he still had anything, he nodded. I kept the emails, the fake ones. I also kept the ones where I begged her to believe me. He sent them, and they were damning. The same patterns, the same tactics, the same language. It had happened before. There are families where control isn't just a method, it's a tradition. They call it looking out for their child. But what they really mean is, you'll never be good enough. And if someone is good enough, they break them anyway. Because in a high-control family, the child's love must be exclusive. Every bond outside the parent is seen as a threat. This wasn't just Diane and Gerald being difficult. This was psychological warfare, dressed in designer clothes and matching silverware. I spent the next week doing what felt like digital archaeology. I gathered emails from Thomas, screenshots of manipulated messages, Diane's prescription records, video files from the USB, my toxicology report, texts from Diane to me, notes from neighbors about missing jewelry, Instagram DMs from Haley's old friends who had mysteriously drifted from her life. A pattern emerged. Anyone who encouraged Haley's independence, anyone she grew emotionally close to, was slowly pushed out. They didn't scream. They didn't slam doors. They just sowed doubt, whispered lies, eroded trust from underneath. It was horrifying in its precision and brilliantly evil. I texted Vanessa and asked to meet. She suggested a quiet tea house on the edge of town, the kind with cozy booths and no Wi-Fi. She showed up looking tired but determined. I watched what they did to you, she said softly, and it was like watching my life on repeat. She confessed that Gerald and Diane had tried to break her and Owen up too, told Owen she was using him, called her unstable, even showed him fabricated Facebook messages. They backed off once I got pregnant, she admitted. I think a grandchild gave them leverage, something to manipulate again. I asked why she hadn't told Haley. She looked down. Because Owen never believed me. Still doesn't. He thinks his parents are strict but loving. She slid me another USB stick. More footage. You'll want to see it before you talk to Haley. This footage was worse than the first. In one clip, Diane and Gerald sat in the kitchen drinking wine. Diane was calm, measured, too calm. He's dangerous to our structure, she said. He's not compliant. He doesn't fold. Gerald. Haley's already starting to doubt him. We just need to finish what we started. Another clip showed Diane rehearsing lines in the mirror. I'm worried about how he treats you. He isolates you. He's possessive, practicing them like a monologue, like an actor preparing to poison someone with kindness. Some of the most controlling parents look like saints to outsiders. They give to charity, smile at church, host dinner parties, offer advice in gentle tones, but behind closed doors, they chip away at their children's sense of reality. They rewrite history. They punish independence. And they only love you when you're under control. By now, I had more than enough evidence to bury them. But that wasn't the point. I didn't want to ruin them. I wanted to free Haley. I wanted her to see it herself, to choose what came next with full awareness, not under a fog of manipulation. So I planned a dinner, invited Owen and Vanessa, made sure Haley would be there, and set up my laptop, HDMI cable ready. She deserved to see the full picture, unedited, unspun, undeniable. I kept it casual. Let's have dinner at our place here, I told Haley. Just you, me, Owen, and Vanessa. Nothing fancy. She agreed, no suspicion, no tension, just a tired smile and a quiet, it might be good to see them. I cooked, set the table, poured wine, but behind the warm lighting and folded napkins was a laptop connected to the TV, ready, waiting, and after the plates were cleared, I said it. There's something you all need to see. The video began with Diane in the kitchen, same night as the birthday dinner. She poured liquid into a glass, eyes flicking to the doorway, unaware of the hidden camera above her. Then the switch, me entering, taking the glass, Gerald drinking it. Haley said nothing. Owen leaned forward. Next clip, Diane and Gerald arguing. You gave him the wrong one. What are you doing, Diane? This isn't the first time. The third clip was what broke the silence. Diane rehearsing lies in the mirror, repeating manipulative lines like she was auditioning for a role. Haley didn't blink. Vanessa held Owen's hand. He pulled it away. "This isn't real," he muttered. "This isn't them." I paused the footage. "There's more, but you get the point." Haley turned to me. Her voice was a whisper. "Why didn't you tell me?" I looked her in the eyes. "Because I needed you to see it. All of it. Not just what they did to me, but what they've been doing to you. Your whole life." Silence. Then Haley stood up and walked to the sink, her back to all of us. When she finally turned, her face was wet with tears. I believed them. I thought they were protecting me. Owen stood too. "This is garbage. You edited this." Vanessa finally spoke, voice low but clear. "They did it to us too, Owen. Why do you think they only started acting like they liked me after I had James? Because they had leverage." Owen stared at her like she'd slapped him. "You never told me." "I tried," she said. "You wouldn't listen." He sat down slowly, shaking his head. "Denial is the last defense of the manipulated. Because accepting the truth means accepting that you didn't see it, that you were used, deceived. It's easier to call it a lie than to admit your foundation was rotten. But once the mask comes off, you can't unsee it. And Haley, she saw it." We didn't talk much that night after Owen and Vanessa left. Haley crawled into bed beside me around midnight. No words, just quiet. Then softly, "I need time, but I believe you." Diane called the next day. I didn't answer. Haley did. She put her on speaker. "Darling, your father and I think you should come stay with us for a while. Marriage is hard. Sometimes separation brings clarity." Haley cut her off. "I've seen the videos." Silence. "What videos?" "The one where you drugged Julian's drink. The one where you and Dad planned to break us up." Another pause. "Honey, whatever he's shown you, stop." Her voice was calm, strong. "We're coming over tonight, all of us, and we're going to talk. No more lies." She hung up, then turned to me. "They'll try to flip it on you, twist it, blame you." I nodded. "I know. So what's our plan?" For the first time in weeks, I smiled. "We show them who I really am. Not the version they've invented. The one who doesn't just take pictures, but knows how to tell a story." That evening, we arrived at Gerald and Diane's house just after 7. I had my camera bag slung over my shoulder, but no intention of taking pictures. Inside the bag was a USB drive, a signed toxicology report, copies of Diane's prescriptions, and a written summary of everything I had uncovered. Indexed, color-coded, time-stamped. My camera was set up too, on a tripod, in plain view, because this wasn't going to be a screaming match. This was going to be a record. Diane greeted us like nothing had happened. "Haley, sweetheart, I was just about to put on some tea." "No need," Haley said coolly. "We're not staying long." Gerald came into the room with a half-empty glass of bourbon. He looked me over and smirked. "I understand there's been a misunderstanding." I set up the tripod and aimed the camera toward the living room. "No misunderstanding," I said. "I'm documenting this conversation for the family archives." Diane's smile twitched. "This is private family business." "Exactly," I replied. "And I'm family, even though you've tried very hard to change that." For the next 2 hours, we laid it all out. The drink, the toxicology report, the surveillance footage, the rehearsed lies, the recordings from their own house, the history with Thomas, the manipulation of Haley's entire adult life. Every time they denied something, I played a new clip, showed a new screenshot, read a new message. Their denials got weaker. Their posture stiffened. And finally, Haley stood up. "I love you both, but what you've done is unforgivable." She paused, letting that settle. "You don't get to control me anymore." Owen nodded. "We're adults. We choose our own partners, our own paths." Diane started to cry. Not from remorse, from loss of control. "We were just trying to protect you," she whimpered. "By drugging my husband?" Haley shot back. Diane said nothing. Gerald just stared ahead, quiet for once. As we prepared to leave, I pulled a small USB drive from my bag and handed it to Gerald. "This contains everything. The footage, the reports, the testimony. It's yours to keep." He took it, frowning. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said slowly, "that I'm not going to ruin your reputation. Not unless you give me a reason to. That would hurt Haley, and I'd never do that. I turned toward the door, then stopped. But if you ever try to interfere again, if you ever whisper one word against me or our marriage, that footage goes to every member of your golf club, your business partners, your precious social circle. Gerald looked at me, really looked. And for the first time, he nodded, just once. I underestimated you. Yes, I said. You did. That night, I realized something I hadn't fully understood before. I hadn't won by shouting louder. I hadn't won by playing their game. I won by refusing to play it at all, by being deliberate, strategic, honest, and most of all, by knowing my worth even when they didn't. 6 months passed. Haley and Owen started therapy, separately and together. They had a lot to untangle. Diane and Gerald kept their distance, an occasional text, a card on birthdays, no visits, no interference. Then just before the holidays, an invitation. Christmas dinner, fresh start, no drama, love, mom and dad. We went, out of caution, curiosity, closure. Dinner was fine. Diane was polite. Gerald was disarmingly warm, asking about my recent work with National Geographic. Afterward, he pulled me aside into his office. I've been thinking about your future, he said. He poured 2 glasses of scotch and slid one toward me. Photography's done well for you, but have you considered diversifying? I could bring you into my firm. Junior partner, big salary, stability for the baby. I picked up the glass and then set it back down, untouched. Why would you do that? He smiled. Your family, and I respect how you handled everything. You protected Haley. That's what a real man does. I paused. I appreciate the offer. But no, his smile tightened. Julian, be reasonable. This is an olive branch. It's another attempt at control, I said calmly. You can't buy me, Gerald, and you can't stand that Haley loves me exactly as I am. He leaned in, whispering. Everyone has a price, I stood up. That's where you're wrong, and that's why you'll never understand your daughter. Back in the living room, Diane was showing Haley old photo albums. You were so happy when you lived at home. Haley caught my eye. I gave her a slight nod. She stood. Mom, Dad, I have something to tell you. Everyone turned. We're having a baby. I'm 3 months pregnant. Diane gasped. Tears filled her eyes. Gerald approached slowly. Congratulations, he said stiffly. Thank you, I replied, then leaned in, voice low. This child will never be a pawn in your games. I promise you that, he nodded, and for once, said nothing. 3 weeks later, a certified letter arrived from Gerald's attorney. Inside, a deed to the house we were renting, a trust fund for our unborn child. No conditions, no notes. It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement that they had lost, and we had won, not by destroying them, but by drawing a line. Our daughter Eliza was born that summer. Diane and Gerald came to the hospital. They brought gifts, took photos, didn't offer parenting advice, didn't stay long. Boundaries honored. Months passed. We lived. We laughed. We built something real. I opened my own photography gallery downtown. At the grand opening, Gerald and Diane arrived late. Diane held Eliza briefly, under Haley's watchful eye. Gerald shook my hand, looked at the photos, nodded in approval, and left. That night, Haley asked me, do you think they've changed? I thought about it. No, but they've accepted they can't change us. She smiled. Sometimes, that's enough. In the end, the best revenge isn't rage. It's resilience. It's standing your ground without apology. It's protecting what matters with quiet conviction. It's choosing peace, not because you gave up, but because you finally took control. I didn't burn their house down. I just built my own. And that's the most satisfying ending I could have asked for. After the confrontation, there was no explosion, no screaming, no disowning, just silence. But silence from a manipulator is rarely surrender. It's retreat. It's recalculation. And I knew better than to believe it was over. Diane and Gerald were snakes under floorboards, quiet only until they could slither back into control. So while Haley and Owen unpacked decades of false memories in therapy, I prepared for the next strike. The hardest part wasn't exposing the truth. It was healing after it. Haley blamed herself. Not for what happened, but for how long she hadn't seen it. "I should have known," she whispered one night, curled beside me in bed. "No," I said gently. "You shouldn't have. They're good at this. They've had decades of practice." Let's pause for a second. Because this matters, people think abuse only happens to the weak, that it's loud or obvious or bruised. But the most dangerous abuse is silent. It sounds like concern. It looks like love. It hides behind the word family, and it convinces strong, smart, independent people to doubt themselves. That's what Diane and Gerald did. They didn't control Haley with fear. They controlled her with guilt. "You're too emotional. He's just worried. We only want what's best for you." Until her self-trust faded. What happened to Haley wasn't rare. I started reading a lot. I spoke with therapists, read forums, watched interviews. And the pattern, it was everywhere. Parents who undermine their child's partner, sabotage careers, plant doubts, use money as leverage, use affection as a reward for obedience, and almost always when they call it love. In one of the interviews I watched, a woman named Isabel, now 38, told a story that sounded eerily familiar. She had been engaged at 26 to a brilliant pediatrician named Daniel. Smart, kind, deeply in love. But Isabel's father disapproved. Why? Daniel's family was working class. He drove a 10-year-old Toyota. He didn't come from money, so Isabel's father began a campaign. Slipping in fake evidence of cheating, sending anonymous emails, even paying a woman to flirt with Daniel in public, then having someone photograph it. The engagement ended. Years later, Isabel found out. And what broke her heart wasn't just the manipulation, it was that she believed it. "My dad weaponized my own self-doubt," she said, "and I let him." Haley's healing came in layers. First rage, then regret, then finally, release. And through it all, I stayed steady. Not perfect, not without resentment, but present. Then about 4 months after Eliza's birth, we got a call from Gerald's lawyer. Routine, they said, just a check-in, an update on family assets. But it wasn't routine, because hidden in the fine print was a clause, a proposed amendment to Eliza's trust fund, one that required regular custodial visitation with Diane and Gerald. Let me be clear, this wasn't about love, or bonding, or being doting grandparents. This was about access, leverage, control, a backdoor. Because manipulators don't give up. They just change tactics. We rejected the clause immediately. Haley sent a letter. Strong, clear, final. "We appreciate your gift, but we decide who is in Eliza's life. Not you, not your lawyer, us." That same night, our doorbell rang. It was Diane. No warning, no invitation. Just standing there on the porch like nothing had happened, holding a stuffed giraffe in one hand and a pie in the other. "Thought I'd drop by," she said sweetly. "You can't just show up here," I told her, stepping outside and closing the door behind me. "I'm her grandmother, Julian, and I'm her father." She tried to guilt me, talked about bridging gaps, family unity, starting fresh. But I saw through it. The gift wasn't a giraffe. It was a wedge, a way to re-enter our lives through the baby's nursery, and I refused to let it in. "You're not welcome here. Not like this. Not until you can be honest about what you did." Her face hardened. "You're turning Haley against us." "No," I said. "You did that all by yourself." She left without another word. This moment matters, because boundaries are how we reclaim peace. They're not punishments. They're not rejections. They're protections. And sometimes the healthiest thing you can say to family is, "No, not anymore." 3 weeks after Diane's porch stunt, something strange began happening. Haley's college friends, people who had been quiet for years, started messaging her again. Casual, polite, out of nowhere. "Hey, stranger, thinking of you. Let's catch up soon. We should grab coffee sometime. I'm back in town." At first, she smiled. "Maybe it's just the baby," she told me. People love reconnecting after big milestones. But I'd learned to trust patterns, and this one felt placed, like chess pieces on a board we hadn't even realized we were playing on. Toxic parents don't always attack directly. Sometimes they move through others. Mutual friends, old contacts, extended family, even colleagues. They feed information, plant rumors, build a parallel reality behind your back. And when it surfaces, it looks like concern, like curiosity, like coincidence. But it's not, it's orchestrated. One afternoon, Haley agreed to meet her old roommate, Jess. They hadn't talked in years. They used to be inseparable. But Jess had drifted away right around the time Haley and I got serious. I had a hunch, and it was right. Haley came home shaken. She asked me if I was happy, really happy. And she said, my mom told her I'd been struggling. I said nothing. She said she always wondered if you were too intense, that you isolate me. That's when I knew. Diane had activated the network again. That night, while Haley took care of Eliza, I pulled out my old hard drive, the one with the digital folders I'd saved over the years. Emails, texts, photos, all the little moments of friction. One thread caught my eye. A message Haley had forwarded years ago from her friend Layla. It was vague, but suspicious. I heard some weird stuff about Julian. Just be careful, okay? Hope it's not true. At the time, Haley had brushed it off. Now, I started tracing it back. In the fall of our second year together, we had a rough patch. Nothing dramatic, just tension. I was busy with shoots. She was adjusting to a new job. One night she confronted me, out of the blue. Did you ever hook up with Sarah from your exhibit team? I was shocked. Absolutely not. She didn't push, but I could see the seed had been planted. We moved past it, or so I thought. But now, I wondered where that seed came from. So I made a few calls, reached out to Sarah, reached out to Layla, reached out to a guy named Carter, who used to work events with us. And what they told me changed everything. Sarah, who I hadn't spoken to in 4 years, was blunt. I always thought it was weird that your girlfriend ghosted me. I liked Haley, but one day she just stopped responding. Turns out, Diane had emailed Sarah, pretending to be Haley. Julian and I are going through a lot. I think it's best if you keep your distance for now. Thanks for understanding. Same with Layla. Diane had messaged her too, subtly suggesting that Julian had a dark side he hid well. I didn't confront Haley. I showed her the screenshots, the metadata, the message headers that traced back to Diane's IP address. At first she was silent, then her voice cracked. I always wondered why Sarah stopped talking to me. I thought I'd done something. She was crying now. And Layla? I believed her. I thought maybe you had cheated, and I just didn't want to know. Let's be clear. This was deliberate. It wasn't a moment of anger. It wasn't one mistake. It was systematic character assassination. Drip by drip, thread by thread, lie by lie. Not to destroy me, but to isolate Haley. Because isolated people are easier to manipulate. Later that night, as we sat on the porch, Haley turned to me. Did you ever think about leaving? I was quiet for a long time. I thought about surviving. I thought about protecting you. I never thought about leaving. She held my hand. I'm sorry I didn't believe you sooner. You believed me when it mattered, I said. And I meant it. In a Reddit thread I'd read months earlier, a man described how his in-laws tried to frame him as financially abusive. They manipulated receipts, fake spreadsheets, even went to his wife's boss to raise concerns about his spending. It almost worked, until his wife discovered a flash drive hidden in her mother's jewelry box, with fake documents and screenshots of their digital plan. She never told her parents she found it. She just packed up, moved out of state, and went no contact. I didn't need a war, she wrote. I just needed clarity. We weren't going no contact, not yet, but we were close. Because when you realize someone has been engineering your doubts, your friends, your memories, the only sane response is distance, not to punish, but to protect. There's a myth we're taught from childhood, that family love is automatic, unquestionable, unshakable. But real love, true, safe, nourishing love, doesn't control, doesn't divide, doesn't manipulate. It lifts you. And the moment you see the trap for what it is, you don't beg it to open. You stop pretending it was ever a gift at all. We thought we'd weathered the storm until the letter came. Certified legal header. From Diane and Gerald's family attorney. Inside, a petition, a request for partial custody of Eliza. Grandparents' rights, it read, concern for the child's well-being. Ongoing instability in the home environment. Haley dropped the envelope. They're trying to take her, she whispered. And for the first time since all of this began, she was the one who wanted to fight. Here's what a lot of people don't realize. In some states, grandparents can sue for visitation or custodial rights, especially if they claim the child is being denied a meaningful relationship with them. Abusers exploit this. It's not about love. It's not about bonding. It's about power. And in Diane and Gerald's case, it was the final move in a long, calculated campaign to break us. We lawyered up. Our attorney was sharp. Ex-family court judge turned child advocate. He listened to our story and said two things. They've done this before. You're not the first. We gathered everything. The videos, the messages, the prescription records, the home surveillance files, statements from Sarah, Layla, even Thomas or I organized it all into a portfolio titled Pattern of Undue Influence and Endangerment. For once, I wasn't the center of the story. Haley was, and she was magnificent. She wrote a 7-page statement to the court, detailing not just what had happened recently, but what had happened over her entire life. The gaslighting, the sabotage, the control, and she ended it with one line that I'll never forget. My parents taught me how to doubt myself. My husband taught me how to believe again. I choose belief, and I choose my daughter. In a similar case in Michigan, a father named Andre was sued by his ex-in-laws for visitation after his wife passed away. At first, he thought they were grieving, but soon they began showing up at daycare, questioning his parenting, calling CPS anonymously. He fought back with receipts, screenshots, statements, medical records. The judge dismissed the grandparents' petition as coercive and retaliatory. Andre later said, "They weren't trying to love my daughter. They were trying to erase me." The hearing wasn't long. Our lawyer laid out the evidence. Diane's behavior, Gerald's enabling, the drugging incident, the email manipulation, the character testimonies. Then Haley read her statement. Diane cried. Gerald looked bored. When the judge ruled, her words were simple. This court finds no grounds to grant partial custody or visitation to the petitioners. Furthermore, the evidence suggests a pattern of manipulation that places the child at emotional risk. Petition denied permanently. It was over. No more threats. No more legal tricks. Diane slumped in her chair. Gerald clenched his jaw, and we walked out into the sun. Was it easy? No. Court was humiliating, painful, messy. But it was necessary, because peace without protection is a lie. And sometimes the only way to truly reclaim your life is to defend it. After the hearing, we went to a park. Eliza was in her stroller, babbling. Haley sat on a bench backlit by late afternoon light, her face raw but relieved. And in that moment, I took the photo. I didn't stage it. I didn't adjust her hair, or the frame, or the color. I just clicked the shutter and captured what freedom looks like. In an Instagram post I came across months later, a woman posted a selfie of herself, makeup-free, teary-eyed, smiling. The caption read, "This is the first photo of me my mother didn't criticize because I didn't send it to her." Sometimes the moment you reclaim your life doesn't look triumphant. It looks quiet, soft, simple, free. The next few months were uneventful, which in our world meant peaceful. Diane and Gerald stayed silent. No visits, no messages. Just a single letter from their lawyer, acknowledging the court's decision. Haley went back to therapy. Owen began family counseling with Vanessa. We started living, not hiding, not defending, just living. It's strange, isn't it? You spend so long fighting to survive someone's poison that you forget what clean air feels like. But eventually, you breathe again. You smile without checking for approval. You take photos without needing to prove your worth. And you raise your child not with fear, but with freedom. The card was cream-colored, embossed, expensive, formal. It read, "Please join us for Christmas Eve dinner. A fresh start. Family first. Signed, Gerald and Diane." No apology, no reference to the court. No acknowledgement of what had happened, just a suggestion that we should all pretend. This is common. After their control is challenged and they lose, abusers often extend false olive branches, not to reconcile, but to reset the game, to wipe the slate, to pretend they're the victims of drama while keeping you locked in their narrative. Haley sat on the couch, card in hand. They're still my parents. I know. I want to go, but on our terms. Hotel, not their house. We stay as long as we feel comfortable. Eliza never leaves our side. And if they start anything, we leave. We agreed. Because sometimes healing isn't just distance, it's returning with power. Diane answered the door in pearls and red lipstick. Gerald wore a cashmere sweater and a salesman's grin. You look well, he said, sizing me up. I didn't respond. Eliza cooed in Haley's arms. Our little angel, Diane said. Come inside. Dinner's ready. The table was immaculate. Turkey, cranberries, wine, as if the last 18 months had never happened. Small talk, too much eye contact, too many compliments. I didn't eat much. Neither did Haley. Owen and Vanessa arrived late. Said they got stuck in traffic. Gerald poured wine. To new beginnings, he toasted. Nobody raised their glass. He drank anyway. Diane cleared her throat. Julian, your photos, they're really making waves. I nodded, said nothing. And your gallery, such a brave endeavor. Still silence. She turned to Haley. You've always been drawn to passion, but we used to worry it came at the expense of security. Haley smiled tightly. We're very secure now. Thank you. Another common tool, the backhanded compliment. It's not praise, it's posturing. You're so brave to take that risk. You've really grown since being with him. I guess some people make it work. They're testing your boundaries, hoping you'll snap, so they can say, see, you're the problem. But silence, calm, stillness, that's power. After dessert, Gerald motioned me into his study. Just a quick chat, man to man. I followed. He poured scotch. Didn't offer me any. You're doing well. I respect that. I waited. But passion has a shelf life, Julian. You've built a brand. Great. But what about scale? Equity? Legacy? He leaned in. I'm offering you a chance to join my firm. Junior partner. Real money. Real stability. I picked up the glass. Didn't drink. Why? He smiled. Because you're family. And because I misjudged you. Let's build something bigger. I set the glass down. This is another attempt at control. He stiffened. You think you're protecting Haley. But what you don't see is that I built this family. I know what's best. You drugged me. He exhaled hard. That was Diane. And you covered it. He didn't reply. In a viral TikTok, a woman shared how her ex-fiance's mother, who had sabotaged their engagement, later invited her to lunch, acting like it was water under the bridge. At lunch, the mother offered her a business opportunity, a pyramid scheme, a control tactic, a bribe disguised as mentorship. They never change, she captioned. They just rebrand. Back in the living room, Diane was showing Haley photo albums. You were so happy then, she said, pointing at toddler Haley in matching dresses. You lived for that house, that garden, that life. Haley looked up at me. I gave a slight nod. She stood up. Mom, Dad, I have something to tell you. Everyone turned. She took a deep breath. We're having another baby. Gasps. Cheers. Diane reached for her. Haley stepped back. And this child will never be a pawn in your games. If you want to be in their lives, you'll play by our rules. Some announcements aren't just updates. They're armor. They draw a line. They say, we are our own unit. We don't belong to you. It's a shift in gravity. And in that moment, Gerald and Diane were no longer the sun. They were satellites, distant, spinning, fading. Silence followed Haley's announcement. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy, stunned kind. Gerald looked like he'd just lost a game he didn't know he was playing. Diane tried to smile. That's wonderful news. But her eyes were scanning Haley's face, searching for a weakness, a flicker of the old daughter she could pull back in. Haley didn't give it to her. What happened in that moment was invisible, but monumental. The center of gravity in that family changed. For years, Gerald and Diane had been the sun. Everything orbited around them. But now, Haley had created her own solar system, one where she was the gravity. Owen stood up. He'd been silent most of the evening, withdrawn, observing, but now something cracked. "You've done this to all of us," he said quietly. Vanessa reached for his hand, but he stepped forward. "I believed you when you said Vanessa wasn't good enough. I believed you when you said Julian was unstable. I believed you when you told me Haley was too emotional to know what she wanted." He looked directly at Diane. "You made us doubt the people we love. This is often how it happens. The quiet child, the one who keeps the peace, avoids conflict, nods at the dinner table. They erupt, not with violence, but with clarity. Because when silence becomes unbearable, it often becomes truth." Diane cracked. "You're turning on me now too?" she shouted. "After everything we've done for you." Owen didn't flinch. "You didn't do it for us. You did it for control." She turned to Haley, eyes wide. "I raised you. I kept you safe." "No," Haley replied. "You kept me small." Diane burst into tears. Gerald stood up, put a hand on her shoulder, not with affection, but with restraint. "Enough," he said quietly. Later, while Diane sobbed upstairs, Gerald asked to speak with me alone. Again. But this time, it wasn't in his study. It was outside on the porch. He didn't offer me scotch. He didn't smile. He just looked out at the stars and said, "I underestimated you. You said that once before. I meant it more this time." He was quiet for a while. Then, "I've lost control of my family. You never had it. You just held them hostage." He nodded slowly. "She's not well," he said, speaking of Diane. "Hasn't been for years." In a support forum, a man named Jeff shared a similar moment. His wife had spent years emotionally abusing their children, and he did nothing, thinking silence was neutrality. One night after their daughter cut contact, he broke. "I realized I hadn't protected my family. I'd protected my comfort." He wrote her a letter, a real one. No excuses. "I stood by while you suffered. I see that now. I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness, just truth." Gerald didn't apologize. He wasn't built for that. But in his own way, he acknowledged the shift. "You're not like me," he said. "I hope not. Haley's lucky, and I think you're going to be a better father than I ever was. I will be, because I learned from you what not to do." He didn't reply, just turned away and went back inside. And somehow, that was enough. It's important to say this. You don't have to reconcile with toxic people to gain closure. You don't need an apology. You don't need a hug. Sometimes, you just need them to see you and step aside. The car was quiet. Eliza slept in her seat. Haley looked out the window for a long time. Then, "Do you think they'll try again?" "Maybe, but we'll be ready." She nodded. "You handled tonight with grace. You did better. You didn't just defend yourself. You defended us." A Reddit user once described a Christmas dinner where she finally confronted her controlling mother. After years of emotional blackmail and manipulation, she calmly laid out her boundaries. No unsolicited parenting advice. No showing up unannounced. No pitting siblings against each other. Her mom didn't explode. She deflated. And in that deflation came liberation. "It wasn't peace," she wrote, "but it was the first breath I'd taken in years." Weeks passed. Diane sent a few passive-aggressive emails. Gerald stayed distant. Haley ignored them. Owen and Vanessa flourished. They even invited us to Eliza's first birthday party. Just us, not their parents. It was warm, simple, happy. There were no speeches, no sabotage, no tests, just family, the kind we chose. Our second child was born on a soft April morning, a girl. We named her Clara. Haley wept the first time she held her, not from pain, from joy. I took a photo, the same way I always do. But this one, it wasn't about light or composition or timing. It was about truth, a moment no one could edit, no one could poison, no one could take away. A week after Clara's birth, we received a certified letter. Inside was the deed to the home we'd been renting, now transferred to our names, free and clear. Legal paperwork for a trust fund established in Eliza and Clara's names. No letter, no signature, just the documents. It wasn't an apology. It was something colder and clearer. Acknowledgement of defeat, of limits, of who now held the power. In a podcast interview, a woman named Naomi shared how her emotionally distant father never said sorry, but when her child was born, he sent her a binder. Inside, college savings, medical instructions, a notarized will naming Naomi as executor. It wasn't warmth, she said, but it was surrender. And for him, that was love. That summer, I opened my first photography gallery in downtown Asheville. The theme? Unfiltered. Portraits, landscapes, candids. Moments that told the truth, whether beautiful or brutal. Haley stood beside me, Clara on her hip, Eliza clinging to my leg. My parents flew in from Oregon, old clients, new collectors, even a few press outlets. Late in the evening, Gerald and Diane arrived. No fanfare, no grand entrance. They walked the gallery silently. Diane paused at one photo, the one of Haley in the park, right after the custody case. She said nothing, but her hand trembled as she walked away. Gerald shook my hand at the exit. "You did well." "I know." And they left. That was the last time I saw them in person. Sometimes abusers don't apologize. They don't explain. They don't break down. They just stop. They disappear into the background, not out of grace, but because the war has been lost, and they know another battle will cost too much. That winter, a red envelope arrived. From Gerald. Inside, a glossy version of his company's annual report. My photos were everywhere. Landscapes I'd shot in Montana, headshots I'd taken in the early days, even a black and white photo of Gerald himself I had snapped at a family event, long before the storm. On the final page, photography, Julian Mercer. A post-it was stuck to the back cover. "Hired the best photographer I know. Thought you'd want a copy." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was respect. Not the kind that comes from love, but the kind that comes from finally seeing someone clearly. "I can't own you, so I'll credit you." That was enough. A woman on Medium once shared this line about her narcissistic boss, who later quoted her research in a public keynote. Without apology, he never said sorry, but he said my name in front of thousands. That was his version of atonement. And I took it. Because not every ending comes wrapped in healing. Some just come with truth. Years later, as I was organizing digital files for a book project, I found it. The photo I'd taken of Diane the night she drugged me. She was mid-pour, smile too bright, eyes darting, hands shaking. I never printed it, never shared it, but I kept it. Not for revenge, for remembrance. Because some truths aren't meant for the world, just for us, to know, to survive, and to outgrow. So many people ask me now, how did you win? And the truth is, I didn't win by fighting harder. I didn't win by out-scheming them. I didn't win by proving them wrong. I won by stopping the game, by building a life where their rules didn't apply, where approval wasn't currency, where silence wasn't survival, where love wasn't leverage. And now I take pictures of people who feel whole, people who've reclaimed their stories, and I live beside the woman who did the same. Last week, Eliza, now 6, climbed onto my lap as I was editing photos. "Daddy," she said, "why don't we visit Grandma and Grandpa much?" I looked at her. "Because they didn't know how to be kind." She nodded. "We can still love them," she said. "We can," I replied, "but we don't have to let them tell our story. If you've been through something similar, if you felt silenced, doubted, gaslit, poisoned, emotionally or otherwise, let this be your story too. You can walk away. You can speak truth. You can choose peace over performance. And the greatest revenge isn't bitterness. It's building a life so full, so vivid, and so honest that no one can deny it was yours.